On Valentine's Day, I sat in a stuffy, wood-paneled office across from my ex-girlfriend, her parents, and their high-priced lawyer. They were all staring at me with a mixture of pity and contempt, utterly convinced that I was a vindictive liar, trying to ruin their perfect daughter's life. They had no idea I was holding a secret on my phone. A secret that, in a few short minutes, was going to make the entire room absolutely explode. If you believe that the truth has a funny way of coming out at the most perfect moment, then you're in the right place. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and get ready for a story where justice isn't just served. It's caught on camera. Let's dive in. It all started my freshman year at a huge state university. I was young, naive, and had somehow landed a spot in a prestigious honors program. The best perk? We were all housed together in one co-ed dorm building. It was an instant community, a bubble of bright-eyed students ready to take on the world, and like any dumb, hormone-driven freshman, I immediately rushed into a relationship. Her name was Megan. She lived on the floor directly above me, making late-night study sessions and movie nights almost suspiciously convenient. On the surface, she was bubbly and energetic, but it didn't take long for the rest of the dorm to see what I, in my love-struck haze, was conveniently ignoring. Megan talked a lot, and when she talked, it was almost exclusively about one subject: herself, her achievements, her thoughts, her drama. She'd often brag, with a strange sense of pride, about being a fairly aggressive person. In my mind, I just filed it under quirky and confident. I couldn't see the mile-wide, blood-red flag flapping violently in my face. Our little bubble of convenience chugged along until the end of the first semester, right after Thanksgiving break. I was walking back from a late evening class, the cold November air biting at my cheeks, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Her voice was tight with concern. "Honey," she said, "I was just looking at your bank account. There's some unusual activity." My stomach clenched. Back then, I was a financial minimalist. I had no credit card, just a simple checking account and a debit card. This was my lifeline, my access to the savings I'd meticulously scraped together for books, emergencies, and the occasional late-night pizza. I almost never used it. So hearing about unusual activity was like hearing a ghost was in my closet. It just didn't make sense. My mom read out the charges, 6 of them, all from Grubhub, totaling $104.29. Over the past 2 weeks, someone had been having a feast on my dime. My mind raced, trying to connect the dots. I hadn't ordered anything. Who could have gotten my card number? My thoughts immediately, and reluctantly, drifted upstairs, to Megan. A cold, sinking feeling started to pool in my gut. I trusted her, of course. I trusted her, but she was the only person who'd had easy access to my wallet when it was sitting on my desk. I decided to be direct. I walked up to her floor, knocked on her door, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey," I started. "Weird question. My mom just called. There are a bunch of Grubhub orders on my bank account that I didn't make. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" She looked me dead in the eye, her expression a perfect mask of innocence and concern. "Oh my God. No. That's terrible. Someone must have stolen your card info. You need to cancel your debit card. Like right now." Her denial was so quick, so convincing, that for a moment, I felt a wave of relief, followed by a pang of guilt for even suspecting her. She seemed genuinely worried for me. So, I did exactly what she said. I spent the next hour on a torturously long phone call with my bank, navigating automated menus and hold music, until finally, my card was canceled and a new one was on its way. I remember cutting the old card into a dozen tiny pieces, feeling a sense of security as the plastic confetti fell into my trash can. But the mystery still gnawed at me. The next day, on a whim, I decided to reach out to Grubhub. I didn't expect much, but I shot a message to their customer service account on Twitter. "Hey," I typed, "my card was stolen and used for several orders on these dates. Is there any way you could send me the receipts?" To my surprise, they replied almost instantly. They said they could send me the first and last receipts, but for privacy reasons, They would have to redact the personal information of the account holder. A few minutes later, 2 images popped up in my DM. I opened the first one. It was a receipt for an order from 2 weeks ago, and when I saw their redaction job, my heart stopped. They hadn't used a proper blackout tool. It looked like they just scribbled over the name using the Snapchat draw tool with a semi-transparent marker. And underneath that flimsy digital scribble, one name was still perfectly, horrifyingly legible. Megan. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked on the second image, the receipt for the most recent order. Same name, but what truly made my blood run cold was the timestamp. The order had been placed just 2 hours ago. 2 hours ago. That meant while I was on that agonizingly long call with the bank, canceling my card, Megan was likely sitting in her room, 1 floor above me, happily chowing down on food she had stolen from me. The sheer audacity was breathtaking, and the worst part, we both had unlimited meal plans, paid for by our parents. We lived less than 500 feet from the nearest dining hall, which was open late. She didn't need to order food, and she certainly didn't need my money to do it. This wasn't about hunger, it was about something else entirely. Entitlement, deceit. My hands were shaking, a hot, furious energy buzzing under my skin. I pulled out my phone and texted her, my thumbs jabbing at the screen. I contacted Grubhub. I have the receipts. Are you absolutely sure you didn't make those orders? I stared at the screen, waiting. The 3 little dots appeared, then vanished. Appeared, then vanished again. Then her reply came through. A digital slap in the face. In all caps, it read, "Fuck you for suspecting me." Fairly aggressive, wouldn't you say? That was it. The mask was off. The charming, bubbly girl was gone, replaced by a cornered, vicious liar. In that moment, all the affection I had for her evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. I was done. My mind started working on a plan. I was going to get security camera footage of her picking up the food from that evening to have undeniable proof, but I never got the chance. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on my door. It was Megan. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and puffy. The aggressive facade was gone, replaced by a performance of pathetic remorse. She confessed to everything. The food, the lies, all of it. And then, she dropped another bomb. She admitted, through sobs, that she was a serial shoplifter, that she had a problem. It was a deluge of information, a tidal wave of dysfunction, and I was just exhausted. I was too tired to be angry, too drained to process it all. I just wanted her out of my room. I sent her away, telling her we'd deal with it in the morning. But by the next morning, the entire dorm seemed to know. Megan, it turned out, had spent the night doing damage control, broadcasting her own twisted, tear-soaked version of the story to anyone who would listen. I was already being painted as the bad guy. I didn't care. I just wanted out. I sent her a simple, blunt breakup text and decided to write off the SAL 104-109 as the stupid tax for a lesson learned. I had escaped, I thought. I was out. And I was safe. I was so wrong. Less than 2 days later, the real nightmare began. I was sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a paper, my headphones on. A strange flicker of movement in my peripheral vision made me turn. My heart leaped into my throat. She was in my room, standing silently behind me. I ripped my headphones off.
Megan, what are you doing in here?
The door was closed. I hadn't locked it. I lived in a building full of my honors program peers. I never locked it. I would now. She didn't answer my question. Her eyes were wide and intense, scanning the room like a predator. "Give me my stuff," she said, her voice low and menacing. "Where's my stuff?" "What stuff?" I was genuinely confused. We hadn't been dating long enough for her to accumulate a hoard of belongings in my room. "You know," she hissed, her voice rising. I honestly didn't. But she didn't wait for an answer. She started tearing through my room. She ripped open my closet, throwing my clothes on the floor. She pulled drawers out of my desk, scattering papers everywhere. It was a tornado of frantic, baseless rage. I just stood there, stunned into silence, as she searched for this mysterious stuff she refused to identify. And then, as quickly as she had appeared, she was gone. She stormed out, leaving the door wide open, and my room in chaos. The first thing I did was slam the door shut, and for the first time since I moved in, turn the deadbolt. My hands were trembling. This wasn't a breakup anymore. This was something else. Something dangerous. My instincts were right. Within a minute, she was back. A sharp, insistent knocking started at the door. "Let me in," she demanded. I stayed silent, my back pressed against the wall, my heart hammering against my ribs. The knocking got louder, more violent. It turned from knuckles to the flat of her palm, a series of rhythmic, echoing thuds that vibrated through the wood. "I know your thing in there," she screamed, her voice distorted by the door but filled with a terrifying rage. "Open the mother-thing door." Mind you, this wasn't some anonymous apartment building. This was our dorm, our program. Everyone knew everyone. The walls were thin, every single person on our floor, on the floor above, on the floor below, could hear her psychotic meltdown. Then, I heard a new sound, the jiggle and rattle of the doorknob, being twisted back and forth with violent force. The door, a heavy, solid wood door, began to shake in its frame, and then came a sickening thud, and another. She was throwing her entire body against it, shoulder first, trying to break it down. I lived right next door to my RA, but the silence from his room told me he was probably elsewhere. My mind was racing. Fight or flight? What do I do? I fumbled for my phone, my fingers slipping on the screen. I shot a frantic text to my RA. Code red at my room. "Megan is trying to break down my door. Need backup ASAP." As I hit send, I heard a sound that I will never forget. A loud, sharp crack. The wood of my door was splintering. It was actually buckling inward with each impact. It was going to give way, and in that moment of pure panic, a second thought, clear as a bell, cut through the noise. Record this. My thumb swiped to the camera app and hit record. I pointed it at the shaking, cracking door, capturing the horrifying sounds of her screaming and the sickening thuds of her body hitting the wood. My RA, it turned out, was on duty in another building. But he was a good RA. He immediately radioed for help. A few minutes later, though it felt like an eternity, I heard new voices in the hallway. Deeper voices. "Ma'am, you need to step away from the door. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. Right now." The assault on my door stopped. I could hear them talking to her, her voice a mixture of sobs and furious shouting. They brought her downstairs to the main lobby to de-escalate the situation. Eventually, an RA knocked on my now battered door and told me it was safe. Downstairs, Megan finally revealed what the stuff was that she was willing to commit breaking and entering for. It was a t-shirt and a cheap keychain she had given me for my birthday. That was it. I told the RA to just give them to her. I didn't care. I still just wanted this to be over. But it was far from over. The university was involved now. The resident life staff, having witnessed a student attempting to break down another student's door, filed their own paperwork. A mandatory no-contact order was placed between me and Megan. They also strongly recommended I contact the campus police. The police listened to my story and told me my best bet for getting the stolen money back was small claims court, a laughable suggestion for a broke freshman with no car. At the recommendation of the police, I also contacted my school's Title IX office, sending them a detailed, chronological account of everything that had happened: theft, harassment, intimidation, destruction of property. They were interested, to say the least. I told the Title IX representative that I didn't want any trouble. I just wanted a clean break and to move on with my life. But she informed me that it was out of my hands now, based on my testimony and the report from the residence life staff. The university was bringing 3 official misconduct charges against Megan: theft, threatening and violent behavior, and inciting an intervention by university staff. She then asked me to serve as the primary witness in Megan's disciplinary hearing, which would take place next semester. I tentatively agreed, still feeling uneasy about the whole thing. Then, she gave me the date for the hearing. February 4th, Valentine's Day. I actually laughed, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. The university, in all its bureaucratic wisdom, had scheduled the disciplinary hearing for my violent, thieving ex-girlfriend on the most romantic day of the year. The weeks leading up to the hearing were a strange kind of Cold War. The no-contact order meant I never saw Megan, but news travels fast in a small dorm community. My friends kept me updated. For starters, Megan had completely failed every single one of her fall semester classes. The stress, apparently, was too much. I also found out from a guy in my calculus class that Megan had repeatedly tried to sleep with him while she and I were still dating. He'd had to tell her no multiple times. And worst of all, she was still peddling her narrative. She was telling anyone who would listen a completely fabricated version of the story, where I was the manipulative monster, the sociopath trying to ruin her reputation. So when I heard she'd already found a new boyfriend, I couldn't help but feel a grim sort of satisfaction, knowing their romantic Valentine's Day evening was going to be spent in a disciplinary hearing. Finally, the day arrived. I walked to the student disciplinary board office alone, my stomach churning with anxiety. I had no idea what to expect. The board was just a panel of 3 grad students, but the whole process felt incredibly formal and intimidating. I took my seat. A few minutes later, the door opened, and in walked Megan. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her were both of her parents, looking stern and protective. And walking behind them, carrying a briefcase, was a man in a crisp 3-piece suit. Her parents had hired a lawyer, a real lawyer, to defend their daughter against a university misconduct charge. The head of the board, a grad student who looked barely older than me, explained that this wasn't a real courtroom and a lawyer was entirely unnecessary. But Megan's parents had insisted. They believed so deeply in their daughter's innocence that they had paid this man a handsome sum to come and defend her honor. To keep things fair, the board offered me my own pro bono legal representation. In walked a junior economics major, named Jimmy. He was wearing a slightly too large blazer and a confident grin. He was my lawyer. Jimmy had already read my written statement and seen the Grubhub receipts. "It's a solid case," he whispered to me. "Her word against yours on the violence, but the theft charge should stick." I leaned in closer. "There's something else," I said, my voice low. "Something I didn't put in the statement." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "When she was trying to break down my door," I continued. "After I texted my RA, I filmed it." Jimmy's eyes went wide. "You're kidding me." He motioned for me to follow him into a small side office. I took out my phone, found the file, and handed it to him. He put my phone on the table and hit play. The small office was filled with the sounds from that night. The hysterical screaming, the desperate rattling of the doorknob, the sickening, percussive thud, thud of her body slamming against the wood, and the horrible, unmistakable crack of the doorframe. Splintering. Jimmy watched the whole thing, his mouth hanging open. When it was over, he looked up at me, a slow, wolfish grin spreading across his face. "Oh," he said, "we've got her. We've absolutely got her." This was the silver bullet, and nobody else in that room knew it existed. We went back inside. The hearing began. Her lawyer postured and bloviated. Her parents sat there, looking tragically misunderstood. Megan played the part of the doe-eyed victim perfectly. Then, it was my turn. Jimmy stood up. "The board has heard the testimony regarding the events of November 29th, he announced. "My client maintains he was in his room when Ms. Megan attempted to force entry. Ms. Megan's counsel has suggested my client is exaggerating. Rather than debate the point, we'd like to present a short video." He plugged my phone into a large monitor on the wall. A wave of confusion washed over Megan's side of the room. Her lawyer stood up. "Objection. This evidence was not provided in pre-trial disclosure." The head of the board looked at him, completely unfazed. "Sir, this is not a court of law. There is no pre-trial disclosure. Please return to your seat." The lawyer huffed. "Objection. "We don't have objections here," she said flatly. "Sit down." He sat, and Jimmy hit play. The room went insane. The video, crystal clear on the big screen, was undeniable. There was no sound of my voice, no provocation, just the terrifying, raw audio of Megan's unhinged rage and the visual of my door buckling under her assault. In that single instant, I understood everything. Megan had successfully convinced them all, her parents, her lawyer, her new boyfriend, that I was the liar. In her story, I had given her permission to use my Grubhub. In her story, she had knocked politely on my door to ask for her things, and I had maliciously refused. In her story, I was the sociopath. Before that video, it was just my word against hers. Her mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She turned to her daughter. Her voice a piercing whisper shout, "Why didn't you tell us you did this?" Megan's father just stared at the screen, his face pale and slack with shock. The lawyer was on his feet again, sputtering about inadmissible evidence and procedure, while the board member just kept repeating, "Sir, this is not a court of law." And Jimmy, my new best friend Jimmy, was standing beside me, biting his lips so hard to keep from laughing that I thought he might draw blood. And me? I had never wanted revenge. Not really. Even after the theft, the lies, the cheating, I just wanted it to be over. But sitting there, watching the whole charade of lies crumble to dust in real time, watching the architects of that charade stare in horror at the unfiltered truth, I have to admit, it felt good. It felt like justice. The board found Megan responsible on all 3 charges. My side, on Jimmy's recommendation, pushed for termination of her housing contract and full financial restitution. Her side, humbled and defeated, begged for just restitution and a reprimand. The board compromised. Her family was forced to pay back the money she stole. Well, most of it. Her slick lawyer managed to argue that 2 of the 6 charges were for the same amount, so I must have duplicated one, shaving about $15 off the total. A pathetic, petty victory. Megan was also forced to move into a different dorm building on the other side of campus. This was probably a blessing for her anyway. By then, every single student in our honors program knew exactly what she had done, and more importantly, what she had lied about. No one would speak to her. No one wanted to be her roommate. The final nail in the coffin was her report card. She failed all of her classes again that spring. Having now paid for a full year of tuition she'd wasted, an unused dining plan, a lawyer who lost, and the money their daughter had stolen. Megan's parents finally pulled her out of school. Where are they now? I heard Megan eventually came back as a part-time student, but I never saw her again. The no-contact order is still in effect. The guy she tried to cheat on me with. He and I are friends on Facebook now. And Jimmy, the economics major who became my legal champion for an afternoon. We're connected on LinkedIn, of course. As for me, I finished my degree, made better friends, and learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the universe gives you a front-row seat to watch someone face the consequences of their own actions. And I can tell you this for sure. I no longer date fairly aggressive people. Sometimes the best revenge is simply presenting the truth and letting it do the work for you. What's the most satisfying time you've ever seen someone's lies fall apart right in front of them? Drop your story in the comments below. I'd love to read it. And as always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of long-awaited, well-deserved justice. Thanks for listening.